It was a typical Tuesday morning at Lincoln Elementary School, at least until little Tommy walked through the doors with a backpack full of surprises. The other students gasped as Tommy carefully unveiled not one, but 2 live lizards from his backpack. His classmates crowded around in awe as Tommy proudly declared that these were his new pet lizards. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. It turns out Tommy's mother and grandfather had stumbled upon these reptiles during a weekend hike in the nearby woods. Tommy Jenkins arrived at Lincoln Elementary with a secret wriggling in his backpack. He stepped off the bus, sneakers squeaking, heart pounding. The morning sun was barely up, painting the schoolyard gold and sleepy. Tommy's fingers tapped the zipper of his backpack, feeling the warm, tiny bodies inside. He'd barely slept last night, thinking about this moment. Today, he would be a hero. Today, he would show everyone something they'd never seen before. The bell rang. Kids poured through the front doors, shouting and laughing, chasing each other up the steps. Tommy moved slower, careful. He could feel the lizards shifting in their box, claws scratching faintly against the plastic. He grinned. Nobody else had pet lizards. Nobody else had a story like his. He made it to Mrs. Carter's 3rd grade classroom just as the last few kids settled in. The room smelled like crayons and pencil shavings. Sunlight slanted through the windows, catching dust motes in the air. Tommy slid into his seat, backpack clutched tight. Mrs. Carter was writing the date on the board. Tuesday, September 12. She didn't notice as Tommy unzipped his bag, slow and careful, and pulled out the clear shoebox. Inside, 2 small lizards blinked up at him. One was green and sleek, the other brown and speckled. They looked out through the air holes, flicking their tongues. Tommy's heart hammered. He raised the box, just high enough for the kids at his table to see. "Whoa!" whispered Sarah, eyes wide. "Are those real?" asked Jamal, leaning in. Tommy nodded, grinning. "They're my new pets. Found them in the woods." The word spread like wildfire. Chairs scraped. Heads turned. Soon, half the class crowded around Tommy's desk, whispering and pointing. The lizards pressed against the plastic, unbothered by the attention. "Where'd you get them?" someone asked. "My mom and Grandpa found them hiking," Tommy said, voice proud. "We brought them home. Grandpa says they're special." He remembered the weekend hike-a crunch of leaves, the cool shade under the trees, the way his mom had spotted the lizards sunning themselves on a log. Grandpa had been so excited, talking about reptiles and habitats, his hands moving in big circles. Tommy had felt like an explorer, discovering something wild and new. Now, he was the center of attention. Kids asked questions, poked at the box, argued about what kind of lizards they were. Tommy answered every question, making up details when he didn't know. He liked the way everyone listened to him, but then Mrs. Carter's voice cut through the noise. "Everyone, back to your seats, please." The class scattered, giggling and whispering. Tommy kept the box on his desk, hoping she wouldn't notice. But Mrs. Carter's eyes were sharp. She walked over, hands on her hips. "Tommy, what do you have there?" He held up the box, trying to look brave. "These are my pet lizards. I brought them to show everyone." Mrs. Carter's face changed. She knelt down, peering at the lizards. For a moment, Tommy thought she might smile, but then her mouth tightened. "Tommy, you know we can't have animals in the classroom, especially wild ones." Tommy's stomach dropped. He looked at the lizards, then back at Mrs. Carter. "But they're safe, I promise. I fed them bugs and everything." She sighed, soft but heavy. "I know you meant well, but it's against the rules. We have to keep everyone safe, including the lizards." Tommy's cheeks burned. The other kids stared at him, whispers starting up again. He wanted to disappear. Mrs. Carter stood up, her voice gentle. "I'll have to call the office, Tommy. We need to make sure the lizards are taken care of properly." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. His hands shook as he set the box down. The next hour crawled by. Tommy couldn't focus on math or spelling. He kept glancing at the lizards, wondering what would happen to them. He remembered Grandpa's stories about catching snakes as a boy, about respecting nature. He remembered his mom's smile as she watched him hold the lizards for the first time. He didn't want to lose them. At recess, the kids crowded around again. "Are they poisonous?" asked Brian, eyes wide. "No," Tommy said, though he wasn't sure. "Are you in trouble?" whispered Sarah. Tommy shrugged. He felt small, smaller than the lizards in their box. When they came back inside, The principal was waiting outside the classroom. Next to her stood a man in a blue uniform, a patch on his sleeve that read, "Animal Control." The room went silent. The officer smiled, trying to look friendly. "Hi, everyone. I hear we have some special guests today." Mrs. Carter nodded, her face tight. Tommy's heart pounded. The officer knelt beside Tommy's desk. "Can I see your lizards, buddy?" Tommy pushed the box toward him, hands trembling. The officer opened the lid, careful and slow. He reached in, gentle, and lifted each lizard out, holding them up for the class to see. "They look healthy," he said, "but they belong in the wild, not in a classroom. We'll take them somewhere safe where they can live with other lizards." Tommy bit his lip, fighting tears. "Will they be okay?" he asked, voice small. The officer nodded. "They'll be just fine. You did a good job taking care of them, but wild animals need to be free." The class watched as the officer placed the lizards in a special carrier. Some kids looked sad, others whispered to each other, eyes wide. Tommy stared at the empty box. He felt hollow, like someone had scooped out his insides. Mrs. Carter put a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Tommy. It's hard, but it's important." He nodded, but it didn't help. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Tommy barely heard the lessons. At lunch, he picked at his sandwich. Jamal tried to cheer him up, but Tommy just shook his head. After school, his mom was waiting in the car. She saw his face and knew. "They took them?" she asked, voice soft. Tommy nodded, tears finally spilling over. "They said it was the rules. I just wanted to show everyone." His mom hugged him tight. "I know, honey. You did your best. Sometimes caring for animals means letting them go." He cried into her shoulder, feeling the weight of it all. That night, Grandpa called. "Hey, champ, heard about your lizards." Tommy sniffled. "They took them away." Grandpa was quiet for a moment. "That's tough, kiddo. But, you know, wild things belong in the wild. It's our job to respect that." Tommy wiped his nose. "I wanted to keep them." "I know, but you learned something important, and you shared it with your friends. That matters." Tommy thought about the way the class had crowded around him, the way everyone had listened. Maybe Grandpa was right. The next day, Mrs. Carter started class with a new lesson. "Yesterday, we had a special visit from some wild animals," she said. "Let's talk about what we learned." The class buzzed with excitement. Kids raised their hands, eager to share. "We learned that wild animals need to stay in nature," said Sarah, "and that it's not safe to bring them to school," added Brian. Mrs. Carter nodded. "That's right. Animals have special needs. It's our responsibility to protect them and ourselves." She talked about habitats, food, and the dangers of keeping wild animals as pets. She showed pictures of lizards in the wild, sunning themselves on rocks, blending into the leaves. She explained how animal control helps keep animals safe. Tommy listened, feeling a little lighter. He realized he wasn't the only one who'd learned something. The whole class was different, now more curious, more careful. At recess, Jamal ran up to him. "Hey, Tommy, want to look for bugs? Maybe we can watch them, but not take them home." Tommy smiled. "Yeah, let's do that." They spent the afternoon searching the playground, lifting rocks, peering into the grass. Tommy felt the sun on his face, the earth under his hands. He thought about the lizards, free somewhere out there, and hoped they were happy. As the days passed, the story of Tommy's lizards became legend. Kids talked about it at lunch, on the bus, in the halls. Some drew pictures of lizards. Others wrote stories about wild animals. Mrs. Carter put up a bulletin board, "Respecting Nature." The class filled it with drawings, facts, and stories. Tommy's picture was right in the midly green and brown lizard, sunning itself on a log. Tommy still missed his lizards, but he knew he'd done the right thing. He'd learned that loving something sometimes meant letting it go. And he wasn't alone. His friends understood. His teacher understood. Even the lizards, he hoped, understood. The classroom was quieter now, but it felt different, more alive, more aware. Tommy looked at the empty box on his shelf, then out the window at the trees beyond the playground. He smiled. He was still an explorer, still a hero, and somewhere 2 little lizards were free.